Rockstar Games has always been a master of the opening cutscene. From the quick but effective introduction to Grand Theft Auto 3, to the virtual tour that is Bully's intro, to GTA 4's comedic and creative cutscene, Rockstar nails it every time. I'm not sure if I could pick a favourite, but the opening to the original Red Dead Redemption is particularly memorable to me for many reasons. The first 13 minutes managed to introduce the game's setting, tone, narrative, themes and gameplay, without ever outstaying its welcome or feeling like a tutorial. Let's talk about how, 10 years after release, Red Dead Redemption's introductory sequence is still one of the best in gaming. The opening shots of the first cutscene show the wonder of this new world. The innocent, enticing music, the sweeping shot of the large ferry, and the backdrop of the modern-looking town. In this moment, you are one of the members of the crowd, rushing to exit the ferry and explore the land. The car being craned off the ferry demonstrates the development of the modern world. But wait, anyone who is even remotely familiar with the game or its trailers knows that this game isn't about cars and ferries, or fancy dress and innocent music. Where's the gunslinging cowboy I was promised? There he is, and his suited friends don't look too friendly neither. But of course, they're not his friends, and Rockstar knows that we're smart enough to work that out with a simple gesture of a shoulder. He's being escorted, tasked with something that he's clearly hesitant to do. The first minute and a half before the title card shows Rockstar's strength at setting up the game's tone simply through the context of the location. We don't see shots of outlaws riding horses like the beginning of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, or the iconic desert location that opens A Fistful of Dollars. We see a small city, filled with cars, cranes, smoke, newspapers, street lights, street signs, a clock tower, fancy clothes. Not a single horse to be found, no desert in the immediate vicinity. Because this isn't a game about a rootin' tootin' gunslinger. It's a poignant tale about the death of the Old West and the rapid development of civilization. The two conversations that take place around John on the train serve as an introduction not only to the game's historical setting, but also its main themes. Behind John, Mrs. Bush and Mrs. Ditkiss discuss the removal of the Native Americans from their sacred lands, featuring possibly one of the most twisted takes on the topic I've ever heard.
Yes, they've lost their land, but they've gained access to heaven.
Not only does this immediately set up the Native American history in the game world, which becomes relevant much later in the game, it also demonstrates the greed and ignorance that beset much of the nation at the time, which is one of the game's ongoing themes. They continue this when talking about politician Nate Johns, whose family they describe as classless and hillbilly trash. The conversation in front of John is a little more complex. The preacher tells Jenny that
there is a great deal of difference between an innocent and a savage.
A line on which John doesn't know which side he belongs. They discuss forgiveness and redemption, which John is seeking as he tries to leave his criminal life behind and pay for what he has done. Jenny confesses to the preacher that she struggles to see the distinction between a loving act and a hateful one. John's acts throughout the game parallel this mentality. By capturing or killing his fellow gang members, John's actions may seem hateful, but ultimately he is doing it to protect his family, and surely that is a loving act. I don't think John's placement between these two conversations is accidental. Behind him are two old women stuck in their ways, discussing the savagery of the Old West and judging families based on decades-old actions. In front of him is a young woman seeking answers about the world, discussing the acts of innocence and redemption, and demonstrating a keen interest in the flying cars of the future. John is stuck in between. He is a man who has been forced to move on from the savagery of the Old West, but one who has not yet redeemed himself and is not ready to move into the future. Unlike Bonnie McFarlane, apparently, who, as someone who was born into legal ranching work, crosses the threshold into innocence with ease. Once we arrive in Armadillo, the geography we've come to expect from a western becomes much clearer. We can see desert plains, tumbleweed and cacti. We walk through the rural wooden train station and see the main road littered with buildings and horses. And of course, the main centerpiece is the saloon, complete with the doors, drunks and dancing girls that any fictional saloon would feel empty without. Within the first few minutes of gameplay, the game teaches you all of its basic mechanics while continually advancing the story. You're taught how to walk, run and sprint, how to mount, move and stop a horse, how to match the speed of a companion and to focus on important elements nearby. And while all of this is being taught, you're also seeing more of the open world and discovering more of the story. We find out that John is married, is in New Austin to look for an old friend, and beyond that, he isn't very talkative. Within a short period of travel, we know about his background, his task, and his personality. Let's compare this opening to another well-known historical game that released about 2.5 years prior, 2007's Assassin's Creed. After a cool-looking trailer-like montage, the player is thrown into a tutorial level where the entire goal is to teach you the controls. Control schemes flash onto the screen and you need to try all of them before you can move on. This small level has very little story relevance and only exists to teach the control scheme. Compared to Red Dead Redemption's gameplay tutorial, which is taught as a direct result of the narrative's advancement, Assassin's Creed feels empty and uninspired. Once you've completed this brief tutorial, you're introduced to Desmond Miles, and I mean really introduced to him. He ensures that he says everything loud and clear so that everybody can hear.
You kidnapped me. You strapped me into that thing. I'm a bartender, for Christ's sakes. What do you want me to do, teach you how to mix a martini?
For the next few minutes, the game throws story exposition at you while you're forced to watch from a distance. In its opening scenes, Assassin's Creed fails one of the basic rules of storytelling. Show, don't tell. Instead of showing us Desmond and his life, or have him reveal snippets of information more seamlessly through interactivity, the game forces us to sit and watch as two strangers explicitly discuss why the player is where they are. Ubisoft doesn't trust the player to connect the dots on our own, but most of the time, as Red Dead Redemption proves, it's better to show something than to tell it. Rockstar knows its audience, and it trusts us to understand what it's trying to convey. After a short ride to Fort Mercer, we meet John's old friend Bill Williamson. We hear minor tidbits of information about the gang and the way they lived. And instead of an epic shootout orchestrated by a classic western score or anything of the sort, we see our protagonist shot down in silence. He's not an epic hero who brings the world to justice, he's just a human, forced back into a world that he spent so much time trying to escape. And that's what Red Dead Redemption is about. The death of the West, and how a former outlaw like John Marston is forced to deal with it when all he wants to do is live a happy life with his family. In 13 minutes, Red Dead Redemption says a lot. It introduces its setting, tone, themes, narrative and gameplay without ever skipping a beat. And how it manages to do so without feeling boring or feeling like a tutorial is a testament to the talent of Rockstar Games, and proves why, 10 years after the game was released, it is still one of the very best that gaming has to offer.